Hi, my name is Dr. Mario Wallace, and welcome to another episode of Whiteboard Discussions. The topic for today is change management. But before I get into the topic, let me define what change management is. So change management is more of a tactical, operational method used to increase the success of a strategic initiative or project that's implemented in an organization. There are multiple change management methodologies, but the main one used today, and it has been used for over 30 years, is Kotter's method of change, which is an 8-step method, which the first step of the 8 steps is create a sense of urgency. Now, Kotter's method came from his seminal research, and it was more theoretical than practical. A company by the name of ProSci Change Management created tactical tools to implement Kotter's method of change along with their independent research to strengthen how change is implemented in an organization. Now, since we define what change management is, let's talk about the points that I will discuss today. The first one is understanding hierarchical top-down waterfall method of change, understanding how to effectively communicate using change management principles and strategies, and how to implement change management in large-scale organization. And lastly, how to mobilize the people in the organization to effectively move the change forward. So first of all, we think of change management. We have to think of some big initiative that the C-suite in an organization, this is the top line here of this hierarchical model. The C-suite has identified a new technology or a new procedure or process that they think will drive change and increase profitability within an organization. So the first thing that they think of is Kotter's method of change. How do we create a sense of urgency? If people have been using a technology or a certain procedure or process for years, they have developed the skills and the expertise in that methodology, in that technology, or in that process or procedure. Introducing a new procedure, technology, or process will create a sense of resistance in an organization. Basically, the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, the CHRO, and the COO come together along with other of their peers and decide on a new solution to implement into an organization. Once they agree that they want to move forward with this based on the research they've done, they push that information down on the director level leaders. So these are the strategists or the ones who have strategic foresight in the organization, and they push the new implementation, the new technology, process, procedure, change initiative down to director level leaders who have to implement it at their level. And the director level leader actually pushes it down to the functional managers who actually operationalize it in the actual business units. So what I have here are think of 3 business units or 3 divisions within the organization. The CFO, the Chief Financial Officers Division, the Chief Human Resource Officers Division, HR, and the COO Operational, Chief Operating Officers Division. These are directors that report to them, and these are functional managers who are on the ground in the business unit that report to the director level leaders. We have to do multiple things to ensure the success of a change initiative. And one thing is to identify and assign change managers to work directly with the functional managers. The functional managers are, according to ProSci research, the people who the frontline employees wants to hear their message from. They also want to hear from the CEO, but they mainly want to hear from the functional managers. That's the person who they report to daily and who they engage and interact with daily. But the functional managers need a skill set to effectively implement change. According to the ProSci methodology, the step is to train up the functional managers on certain skills to ensure that they can help and support the change manager in implementing change in the organization. So basically, with each functional manager, there should be a change manager who is supporting that functional manager. The change manager actually assesses what's taking place in the organization, determine different strategies and tactical approaches to use, and communicate that information back to the functional manager. The functional manager makes sure the change manager has all the resources he or she needs to effectively manage the change successfully. Now, with this method, the actual change manager works directly with the functional manager to communicate signals that he or she is hearing from the employees, the frontline employees in the organization. But the functional manager and the change manager work together to train and educate the actual frontline workers on the things they need to do to ensure that there is a successful implementation. One way this is done is through a ProSci ADCAR assessment. As you can see over here, the ADCAR assessment identifies the barriers to change. And there are 5 different barriers according to ProSci: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So any score of less than a 3, according to ProSci, is a barrier to change. And as you can see here, desire, knowledge, and ability, all 3 are barriers to successfully implementing the change in an organization. When you've identified the barriers, you train up the skills in these particular areas so that the second time an assessment is conducted, these bars exceed 3 on the actual scale from 1 to 5. So basically, if there is a knowledge gap according to a ADCAR ProSci assessment, you educate frontline workers on the new technology, new process, and the new procedure. If there is an ability concern or barrier, you have to test their ability to effectively use the technology as you're trying to execute on it. And you measure their effectiveness, their utilization of the technology, and their proficiency of the technology. That's how you determine if you've gotten beyond the barrier of ability. And then reinforcement, meaning all the successful wins that's taking place in the organization, you need to keep communicating those wins, because that's the only thing that keeps them highly engaged and wanting to help ensure that the change is successful. Now, when it comes to communication, according to ProSci, the top-down waterfall method of change, hierarchical method of change, the communication begins with the C-suite leaders communicating down to the director level leaders and the functional managers. And the functional managers communicate to the employees in the organization, the frontline workers. The problem is this type of communication, as you see here, it goes down and it comes back up. It's very slow in its approach of communicating. By the time the communication it goes to the functional managers and they hear from the frontline workers, there's a high potential that productivity has decreased across the organization or within the business unit. So it takes too long for information to come from the bottom back up to functional managers and to be communicated with the director level leaders and the C-suite back to the CEO, because from a humanistic perspective, communication is not top down. It's not communication that comes from the top and it works its way down into frontline workers and then back up to director level and C-suite leaders. That's not how communication is truly done from a humanistic perspective. This is done from a structural organizational perspective, right? Which totally missed the mark on how people truly communicate. So how could we truly help functional managers and change managers effectively and successfully drive change? Where we have to use what we call an agile approach to change. Now, we can assess the people based on their barriers to change and train and educate them accordingly. But when it comes to effectively spreading the message in order to change behavior in an organization, we have to use an agile approach. Basically, the first thing we have to do is assess the frontline workers using a social network mapping tool so that we can understand who are the key people that people prefer to get their information from, who may not be the functional manager, and how the people have self-organized into certain clusters where they gather their information. As you can see here, this is a cluster of people. All these are individual clusters or communities of people within an organization at the frontline level. And people gather around the actual hub, the main person, who is effectively communicating or has some awareness of what this change is. What we have here, we have a hub, is the person in the center. We have nodes, these are individual people. We have bridges that connect one person to another person within another group of people. And then we have what we call a cluster or a community. The hub is a center source of truth, meaning people gathers around somebody who they feel are trustworthy and has an understanding of what the new change is. That is a hub. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hubs. Then we have people who support the hub, and we have bridges that connect certain clusters or communities together. These bridges are very significant, and I'll explain. If information needs to be diffused from one cluster to the next cluster, the best way of diffusing or spreading the information is through bridges. So this person helps to communicate to this group the successes that's happening in this one. If this group has learned a more accelerated way to understand the new change and how to actually effectively use the technology, then we want to replicate what's happening over here to another group. And how we do it is, first we communicate information across, and these people do not have connections with this particular community, so we will communicate the information through these two. But the hub is a center source of truth, or person who people trust the most. So what we have to do is pull these hubs out, pair those hubs with change agents, and educate the hubs on a concept called the agile mindset by Malaz Bustani, Jose Azar, and Richard Holden. We need to teach them psychological safety, because we want the hub to ensure that it's very inclusive on the information that's being shared and communicated. We want to teach them how to run innovative sprints, that if they've identified new workarounds, how do we effectively test it and eventually implement it. And then we want to teach them how to create standard of operating procedures based on the new innovation or new solutions identified within that cluster. And once we identify the new solution that effectively works here, we want to try to replicate it across all the others. But in order to create a more structured and a faster paced solution of change at the frontline level, we have to create what we call artificial bridges. And artificial bridges we have to create relationships based on an agenda that has not organically formed based on people interacting in the organization. All these dots that connect the green lines are relationships that form over time. But in order to effectively to accelerate the change, we have to create artificial bridges. So to create artificial bridges, we draw lines to people who we want to connect with. So we want this person to connect here, this person to connect with this person. I'm gonna connect with this person. I want this person also to connect with this person here. I want this person to connect with that person. I'm just showing you, these are called artificial bridges because these are not naturally formed based on relationships. These are how we want information to be effectively communicated. We want to create a strong, tight network so information is moving faster with the intent to create behavior change within the clusters of people at the frontline level. Now the information goes back up to the functional manager, who communicates it to the director level leader and the CFO. What the functional manager leader is communicating at this point is new solutions that are identified at the frontline level. It's not just information pushed down and forcing people at the frontline level who truly understand if the change is not working and why the change is not working, because they're the ones that's dealing with it. So we have to understand what's taking place and how the communication really works at this level, which is not a top-down hierarchical or waterfall method of communication. The diffusion and the spread of information to create behavior change happens in clusters at the frontline level. Information is communicated up to the functional manager, to the director level, and to the C-suite. So these hubs right here are communicating with the change manager and the functional level leader. So they're telling the change manager and the functional level leader exactly what is happening within the clusters. What are the workarounds? What are the successful solutions? They're testing this information and they're communicating it back out to the change manager. The change manager is designed to continue to conduct more assessments, but the work happens within the cluster with the hub, with the center, with the hub who is orchestrating the things that's happening through psychological safety, timely feedback, providing timely feedback. If success is shown within these solutions, they're taking those solutions and they're creating standard of operating procedures, and then they're replicating them across other departments within the organization to ensure the effectiveness of the change. So we can start with the top-down solution, because organizations will continue to run that way. Even in a flat organization, it still will have a more hierarchical top-down method of communicating and deciding what's new and what should be implemented in an organization. But when it comes to how we mobilize the people at the bottom, we have to mobilize them from an agile way using social network mapping tools, assessments to assess them, identifying the hubs within the actual clusters, identifying the people who self-organize around the hubs, and identify people in here who like conditionally interact, right? People tend to conditionally interact with people in an organization. Conditional interactions are people in an organization who decide who to communicate with based on their own perspective. And when a new change initiative happens, people self-organize. So you see how scattered this is? People may self-organize around certain hubs in a different way with a new change based on what the change is. Hopefully this information is helpful. Hopefully you can use it. And if you have any questions, always reach out to me through any social media platform, or you can email me at info@allthings strategic.org.